I never thought a simple conversation would lead me into one of the most surprising chapters of my life. My name is Emily Carter, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio, where everyone knew everyone else. Life there was slow, simple, and predictable. I worked as a third-grade teacher, lived alone in a little two-bedroom house my parents helped me buy, and I thought I had my future mapped out. Then came David Miller. David wasn't from around here. He was new, moved to town because of some construction project that was taking place just outside of our community. He stood out immediately. It wasn't just his height, though he was tall enough to tower over most men in the grocery store aisles. It was the way he carried himself. Confident, relaxed, as though nothing in life could knock him off balance. We first met at the local hardware store, of all places. I was trying to find the right size screws for a bookshelf I was attempting to assemble. I must have looked completely lost because out of nowhere he said, "You need help with that?" I turned around and saw him holding a small basket with a few tools in it. His smile was disarming, and something about his voice made me pause. I laughed nervously and admitted, "Yeah, I think I'm in over my head." He glanced at the instructions in my hand and quickly picked out exactly what I needed. That was how it all started, simple, innocent, with a moment of kindness in a hardware store. Over the next few weeks, I kept running into him. At the grocery store, at the coffee shop, even at the park where I liked to go for evening walks. Each time, he'd strike up a conversation like it was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't long before I learned that he had come to town to work as a project manager for a new housing development. He was divorced, no kids, and had grown tired of the chaos of city life. There was a calmness about him that drew me in. One evening, we ended up sitting on a bench in that same park after bumping into each other yet again. It was one of those perfect summer nights, warm but not stifling, with fireflies lighting up the edges of the grass. We talked about everything, our jobs, our favorite books, our childhood memories. I told him about how small my world felt sometimes, and he told me about how he used to think bigger was always better until life taught him otherwise. He laughed and said, "Though sometimes, big size does matter." I remember tilting my head and raising an eyebrow, not sure if he was teasing me or being serious. "Big size?" I asked. "Yeah," he said with a grin. "Big dreams. Big plans. Big heart. When people believe in something big, they go further. I believe in that." For some reason, those words stuck with me. The way he said them wasn't flirty or superficial. It was genuine. He talked about having big goals for life, big steps forward, and how he wanted to build something that would last. Something about his conviction made me believe him. It was the first time in a long while that someone had made me think about what I truly wanted beyond my little routines. Soon, I found myself looking forward to seeing him. Our conversations grew longer. Sometimes he'd tell me about the houses he was helping to build, and I'd picture them rising from the ground like hope taking shape. Other times, he'd listen as I confessed my insecurities about being 30 and still single, still unsure if I was doing enough with my life. He never judged me. He only said, "Don't let this small town make you think small. You've got a bigger life in you." One Saturday afternoon, he offered to help me fix that stubborn bookshelf that had started all of this. I hesitated for a moment. I wasn't used to letting men into my space so easily, but something told me I could trust him. So I said yes. When he arrived, he didn't just fix the shelf. He fixed the loose hinges on my kitchen cabinets, tightened the screws on my wobbly dining table, and even replaced a light bulb I couldn't reach. It felt like he wasn't just mending things in my house. He was somehow mending a quiet part of me that had been neglected for too long. Afterward, we sat at my small table drinking iced tea. That's when he told me about his dream. "I want to build something big here," he said, looking out my window at the quiet street. "Not just houses. A community. A place where people can grow, where they believe in themselves again." That's what I mean when I say big size. It's not about things you can hold in your hands. It's about things you can hold in your heart. I stared at him, moved in a way I couldn't explain. No one had ever talked to me like that before. Everyone else seemed content to stay small, to play it safe. But here was this man who believed in something more. And for the first time in my life, I believed him. That night after he left, I sat in my living room and thought about how much I had settled for in my life. Was I living small because I wanted to? Or because I was afraid? Over the next few months, David and I grew closer. We'd meet for coffee, go for long walks, and sometimes he'd bring me to see the progress of the housing project. Watching those houses being built, brick by brick, foundation by foundation, felt like watching hope take physical form. Every time we stood there looking at the structures, he'd say, "See? Big things take time, but they're worth it." It wasn't long before feelings grew between us. But it wasn't a rush. It was slow, steady, like the way he built those houses. I remember one evening when he held my hand for the first time. We were standing near the edge of the construction site, the sun setting behind us, the air warm with the scent of fresh timber and sawdust. He looked at me and said softly, "You know, Emily, you make me believe in something even bigger than all this." I felt my heart race. It was the simplest thing, but it meant everything. That night, when he walked me to my car, I realized how much I trusted him. How much he had changed the way I saw myself. Of course, it wasn't all easy. People in town talked. Some warned me not to get too close to an outsider. Others whispered about his past. But I had come to know him, not just his reputation. He never pressured me, never made me feel less than I was. He just encouraged me to think bigger, to believe in myself. The biggest turning point came one evening after a particularly long day at school. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and doubting everything. David showed up at my door with takeout and a small notebook. He told me, "I want you to write down everything you've ever wanted to do, big or small. No fear, no excuses. Just write." At first, I laughed, thinking it was silly. But when I started writing, I couldn't stop. I wrote about wanting to travel, wanting to start a program for kids who struggled in school, wanting to paint even though I wasn't good at it. I wrote about wanting to love and be loved without holding back. When I finished, he looked at me and said, "See, that's what I've been telling you. You have a big life ahead of you, bigger than you think, and I believe in you." That night, sitting across from him, I realized something profound. He had said big size months ago, and I had thought it was just a phrase. But it had changed everything. It wasn't about material things or appearances. It was about the size of your heart, your dreams, and your willingness to believe. And I believed him. Months passed, and our relationship deepened. We faced challenges, my fears, his past, but we faced them together. Slowly, I stopped living small.